Good afternoon, folks. It is 1 p.m. on Friday, August 19th, 2022. Therefore, I will call the Affordable Housing Trust meeting to order. We have members present. We'll go around the room for a moment to do roll call because we also have a member participating remotely and participating remotely via the Boards of Selectmen's process as it was prior to COVID. So starting on my left, Judith, if you could start us out, please.
Judith Underwood, here.
Don Howell, present.
Larry Brophy, present.
Joe Powers, present. And Brendan, if you could just identify yourself.
Brendan Lowney, present.
And can everyone hear him okay? All right, great. You couldn't hear him in the audience? All right.
You should have a microphone.
Matt, any recommendations? Should I move my microphone closer?
Volume goes up.
I'll do that first, yeah, if you can.
You got a different computer than mine.
All right. Brendan, you want to try that again, please?
Brendan Lowney, present.
It's directional. You may want to point it.
Sorry, Brendan, one more time.
Brendan Lowney, present.
There we go. Excellent. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is the trust's responsibility and in comportment with the charter to reorganize. The positions to be voted on would be chair, vice chair, and clerk. I'll open it up to the membership if there are any nominations.
You have to be chair, according to the trust document.
All right. Do we want to vote that or skip that?
It doesn't matter to me one way or the other, but you have to be chair.
And I'll nominate Dawn for vice chair.
All right.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded for Don Howell for vice chair.
You want to do them sequentially?
Yeah. And then I hear no other nominations, therefore I would ask if there is unanimous acclamation on the nomination. If so, all those signify by, oh, sorry, I can't do that, got to do roll call. Brendan, on vice chair,
Aye.
Don Howell, thank you. Larry?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Don?
I guess aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's 5-0, so that's confirmed. And nominations then for the position of clerk.
I'd nominate Larry Brophy.
Second.
Fine.
It's been
You want
moved and
to?
seconded.
You want?
I don't hear any other nominations, therefore we will vote by unanimous acclamation. Brendan?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, that's 5-0. Thank you, folks. Next item on the agenda is a duplicate, so we're going to go right past that. Under new business B, vote to approve the following meeting minutes. There are 9 dates listed, and it would just be a question of what is the trust's preference on any, all, or some of those.
Can I make a motion to move this to our next meeting, just because we just got the packet and I have not had any time, yeah, we just got the packet.
Yep, move to table to the next meeting. Is there a second on
I
that?
second that.
Yep.
But I will note that they're terrific and very detailed, which is why it probably is going to take some time. because
Thank you,
they're-
and I'll
they're
pass it on
Terrific minutes.
to the folks that have worked on that for us. Thank you very much. So the motion is to table the minutes until our next meeting. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none. Brendan?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Judith?
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, that's 5-0. Next, we have an update from Beth Wade, the Director of Land Acquisition and Project Development for Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod Incorporated, regarding the project at Murray Lane. And Beth, I know you're joined by your colleague Wendy, and Wendy, I apologize, I didn't look up your last name. So if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Wendy Cullinan, the President and CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Cape Cod, and I'm here, as Joe said, with Beth Wade.
Good
And-
afternoon, Wendy, thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having us. We're always happy to be able to get in front of anyone that wants to hear about our projects and what we're up to, and we're so happy right now that we're currently building 6 homes in Harwich on Murray Lane, and so thank you for all the support this committee has given that project. So, and this is a picture here of one of our good news meetings. When we select a family, we kind of trick them after the lottery and say, oh, you forgot to sign something, come on in. And it's one of our favorite days, or whatever, however many days of the year, when we have the families come in thinking they just forgot to sign. And we say, surprise, and give balloons, and we share their tears, because we know it's the start of a journey for them that's going to end with home ownership for them and their families. So, love this picture. I'll give Beth all the credit for putting together this PowerPoint. So our statement, I know you can all read. I won't read it to you. Give you a minute. So we build in all 15 towns on the Cape, and we have currently built 165 homes for 165 families here on the Cape. What we're up to right now. So I started in 2013, and prior to that, we were building 1 or 2 homes a year. We're currently trying to stay on a schedule of building 10 to 12 homes a year. Right now, we have 21 families that we're working with right now to build homes here on the Cape. We have the 6 in Harwich. We hope to be finishing those in November of this year. We expect to get our COs. We are working on 10 homes in Falmouth, and those should be finishing up in February of 2023. We have 2 homes down in Chatham that we raised walls on about a month or a little more ago. We are working on 3 homes in Falmouth. The foundations are in for 2 of the homes, and we're starting to clear the land for the 3rd home in Sandwich. We have 2 homes that we're going to be building in Brewster. One of those is going to be a veterans build, our first veterans build. We're excited about that. We'll market really hard to veteran families. And we have so many veterans on our core volunteer crews, so they're really excited about this. And then we have 4 homes that are in litigation in Wellfleet. Had they not been in litigation, we would have had families living there for the last 15 years. That's how long this is taking us to get approval on the 4 homes. So we had a trial back in April, and we're just waiting to hear the ruling from the judge. So we really are hopeful we'll be able to move ahead with those 4 homes. And then we have some homes under conversation in Truro. We were just approved for CPC funds to move forward with 4 homes in Dennis and up to 6 homes, or 6 to 8 homes in Yarmouth. So we're super busy, and that's what we want to be. So our foundation is very important. So our program requires families, both adults, one or all adults in the family, to put in at least 250 hours of sweat equity. So in case I didn't make that clear, 250 per adult. So if it's a 2-adult family, it would be 500 hours of sweat equity. And this is a huge contribution from these families, because what we see is, they have children. It might be a single mom working 1 job, working 2 jobs. And I always say, I raised 3 children, and I didn't have an extra 10 hours for about 20 years. So not a small thing for these families to contribute their sweat equity hours, which serves as their down payment. The community engagement is a foundation of our program. We invite volunteers to build alongside these families that are building in their community, and we see this process that they go through working with community volunteers, really enriching their life, getting to know people that they're going to be, it might be they know someone from the bank, or they know someone from their doctor's office. So we bring in teams of community groups to build alongside the families, and we also have our core volunteers that build alongside the families. And there's an opportunity for people to sign up on our program for just come for a day or come for a weekend, and you can do it one time or every week. It is the homeowner education. So the homeowners are required to take finance classes. They have a one-on-one budgeting class. They do home maintenance workshops, and they also learn a lot of carpentry skills building throughout the time of building their home. Our homes are affordable. You can see the prices and they are affordable in perpetuity. So there's a rider on the deed that says if these homes are resold, they must be sold as an affordable home. So that stays with the deed. Come on. Oh, there we go. So who qualifies? So we serve families earning less than 65% of the area median income of Barnstable County. We just were approved from our board of directors to now serve up to 80%, because we know there's that missing, what's referred to as the missing middle, that the folks that are just, not eligible for any services, but really struggling to find an affordable home here on the Cape. So depending on the size of our project, some homes might be offered to 60% and less, or 80% and less of area median income. Families need to show their need. So we have teams that visit them in their current living situations. We don't want to build because, the mom's sick of her 25-year-old and the baby sitting out at the pool all day. That's not who we're building for. We're building for working families that will have to pay a mortgage. Their files go out for credit review. They have to be approved that they can afford to pay a monthly mortgage. And not have too much debt as well. So we have a good screening process for our applicants. I mentioned the 250 hours of sweat equity. And then after everyone, so for the for instance, 6 homes that we're building on Murray Lane, I think we had between 70 and 80 applications for those homes. So that just shows what the need is. After there, we have a team that goes through and reviews the applications. And then, as I said, they go out for credit review. So maybe half might make it through that process. And then everyone that qualifies typically actually goes into a paint bucket, and we pick their names out one by one to see who is, will be building homes with us. So we use that word lottery. Sometimes that gets misconstrued, and people think we give away homes. We don't give away homes. Homes are purchased that we help the homeowners secure a USDA mortgage, a low percent mortgage. And they pay a monthly mortgage just like you or I do. It's just a more affordable mortgage. I don't know why I'm having trouble with, there we go. So this is just a list of the individuals that we're currently building or that we have built for. You can see it's people that we really need here in the Cape. We're seeing more and more restaurants can't open fully, or small shops are closed on days because they just can't get enough help. We really don't have enough young people to fill these types of service positions living here on the Cape. So this is who we're building with. I hope you have better luck with this, Beth, than I'm having. I'm going to turn it over to Beth Wade now. Beth works with the towns, going through the 40B process and getting the regulatory agreements all written up. So I give you Beth Wade.
Thank you, Wendy. So I just wanted to refresh you with regard to the designs that we have, and more specifically to some potential designs we have. And Larry has actually just shared with me some other possible designs that I'm going to look at. So this is our current architectural design portfolio, and they will look familiar to you because we are building both the ranches and the capes at Murray Lane. We also, and one of the key elements that we look for, because we involve volunteers in the build process, we need to have designs that are volunteer friendly. So we work very hard because we're not just a housing developer, we're developing community, we're developing skill sets with those who are purchasing their homes. And it's a wonderful way to bring people together. And Millard Fuller, who was the founder of Habitat, loved to talk about how the use of a hammer amongst people was very equalizing. And we certainly see that at our builds. So the most volunteer-friendly is our ranch style, which is in the upper left-hand corner. And then second to that, we have both a 3-bedroom cape, which is on the lower left, and very similar to that is the one-bedroom Cape, which was built in Truro with a composting toilet, no less. Then we also have more of a four-bedroom box colonial that has been built. That particular house was a blitz build. We have a blitz build coming up where the Cape home builders and remodelers build a home in a week. So we actually reserved that for them to build, being high-walled and two-storied. In the upper right corner, there's a home that we did on Glenwood Avenue, and it's a two-family custom design. And we are open at times to being very site-specific if we can make the financials work. But that particular design, for example, whereas in normal times, when there aren't any delays in materials and such, we typically take about a year, 9 months to a year to build the ranches, a little bit longer perhaps for the Cape. It was over 18 months to build that home in Falmouth because it was just that much harder, a little more idiosyncratic. And so, as towns, we discuss in towns the desire for greater density. We've been working on a design that will provide the possibility of placing homes closer together. And we call it either the cottage design or the boxcar design. But before I show that, I just want to speak to the density question. Oftentimes when I'm at meeting, we do hear the concern that Habitat is not building densely enough with our single-family home design. And certainly we will never be able to meet some of the projects, for example, that I have seen in Yarmouth on Route 28 that are multi-story. At this point, that is not our mission. We retain the mission of building single-family ownership homes. A primary reason that we have stuck to the model we have is the fact that our end user mortgage, which is USDA, does not allow, for example, new condominiums to be financed. So that keeps us from creating condominium associations and building in that way. But for example, at Murray Lane, where we have 58,000, just over 58,000 square foot lot, using 40B, which I know is not always a popular mechanism, but we utilize it to create the density that's allowable under that statute. We have allowed for 6 homes where by right zoning, there would have been 1 home. It's a 40,000 square foot requirement for 1 home in that area. And with a special permit, you could have perhaps a duplex there, but we've built 6. So we do density. It's just different, you know, and sometimes I just want to clarify that for you. So what we have is we have a design that one of our dream team architect members, Kurt Raber, is starting to work on. We have 2, we're very fortunate. We have Kurt Raber of Catalyst, and we have Leslie Schneeberger of SV Design in Chatham. And both are working on different designs that we will add to our portfolio. And this is a preview of Kurt's design. It's, again, under development, and we're working out the kinks to make it as user-friendly as possible. But this particular design has the potential to allow us to get really close, one home to another, if that's desirable with regard to a particular parcel that a housing trust or a planner has in mind that is potentially for use by Habitat. So this would allow, Kurt has shared that, you know, you can put more windows in or less windows, depending again on the privacy needs for this side of the home. That's the opposite side. Oops. And unfortunately, I realized I obscured the interior, but there's a kitchen and a bath and a bedroom on the first floor, along with a living and dining area, and then upstairs, 2 bedrooms and a bath. And we're pretty excited about this design and the one that Leslie's working on that is a little more site-specific, and as things continue to unfold with our Yarmouth project, we'll have that added to the portfolio as well. I wanted to touch very briefly on our energy efficiency, because this is something I think we're all very proud of at Habitat. It started out of just a desire to have better air quality. I've read recently that our indoor air quality can be 5 times worse than what's outside, because when we're closed in. So we're using energy recovery ventilators in all of our homes for proper air input and output. We're using solar on all of our homes at this point, air source heat pumps, so there is not any combustion going on in the homes. And recently, we were awarded by ResNet, which is a national organization of HERS raters, home energy system raters, as being the habitat with the best score of any Habitat home in the country. And so for those of you who know, you know, but the lower the HERS score, the more energy efficient, or the potential for energy efficiency the home is. And so we had this particular home, Durkee Lane in Wellfleet, was a -15. We say that we have a net zero possible home, because the one variable that we can't control are the consumer's habits. Oops. That was the ResNet. So as Wendy said, we do all of this with donors and volunteers. I'm going to skip this, but certainly if you're interested in how we raise funds, you can review this on your own. We've had generous support from the community and Cape Light Compact through the years with regard to supporting the solar, and we continue to do so. And I just wanted to give you the specific update on Murray Lane as to where we're at. So forgive me, I have to go to my notes. So I spoke with Bob Riley, who's our Director of Construction, just before this meeting. And he said to me this. He said, all of the solar panels are up and running with the exception of one home. And we're waiting for Eversource. For one reason or another, they did not install that particular meter on that one home. But when that's done, they'll all be up and running. All the homes have been plastered and painted, the ceilings, interior ceilings and walls. The finished floors are down in all the ranches, and we're finishing up on the capes. Not much more to do there. The kitchen cabinets have been installed in all of the homes except for Lot 6, which they're working on currently. The electricians are in doing the switches and plugs and fixtures. The interior trim work has begun. They're hanging doors. The heat pumps are in, and air conditioning is on, which helps our volunteers as they're working. It's been, of course, as we all know, very, very hot this summer, and it does slow down productivity. All of the walls are side-walled. We're very glad to have received shingles. That was very difficult during this COVID era. There's 2 walls that are not shingled, and those are actually will go up over 2 different team days. So we've reserved 2 walls for team days. And that team right there, that was in the Eastern Bank team day, and Eastern Bank was one of a number of home sponsors. So we're very much on target, as Wendy had mentioned earlier, for our COs in November, a little later than we had expected, but after some COVID delays, we're pretty pleased that we should be done in November. And so we want to ask you, what's next for Habitat in Harwich? And we really appreciate this opportunity to ask that question and to update you on a few things that we're doing and specifically what's happening at Murray Lane. We're certainly here if you have any questions.
Beth and Wendy, thank you very much for that presentation. Very impactful and very encouraging and optimistic from my perspective.
Thank you.
Generally, and certainly when it comes to Murray Lane. At this point, I'll open it up to trust members. Brendan, I'll start with you if you had any questions or comments. Brendan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. No questions, but thank you very much for the presentation and the time.
You're welcome, Brendan. Thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Judith, any comments or questions?
I'm just really thrilled and excited with the progress, and it's taken a long time, but that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have you already chosen the families? They've already, yeah, good. Great.
Don, any comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Some random ones. This is not easy for everybody who's watching this. I mean, I've been a member of HESH for years. And,
Yes.
just the process of conveying this to you and getting the approval was daunting. And I remember being at the launch for the actual build. You do great work and don't undersell yourselves. You started out, and I think everybody here, this is a different audience than the folks that you would talk to on your own launches. The numbers you gave are what you're actively engaged in. You folks built Gomes Way, you folks did Oak Street. I mean, there's other things that happen. And the validity of your model, I mean, for those people who are focusing on you just do one or two, as you said, you're not doing one or two anymore. You're doing a lot more than that. But more to the point, even as we need rentals, there's a stability to your model that shouldn't be overlooked. The houses that you're building in Murray Lane, the houses that you built in Gomes Way, those are never going to become Airbnbs.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, they are stable. There are people living in them that have taken root in the community. And I mean, I think as we go along for projects that we need to look for opportunities for, because you're not going to overtake a massive property, but there should be a space for you in, in sections of things that we look at, because there is a benefit to having home ownership and to having the stability that offers. Where kids grow up in a neighborhood, and it's not going to be the house across the street's not going to become every week a different person in it. And it's really important in this environment, because nobody that I know of has gotten their arms around how to control that yet. So anything that you folks do is just inferentially controlled because of the way you do it. So I applaud what you do. You're doing a lot more than what you're letting on, and it has a lasting impact on all the communities you're doing it in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Those kind words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Don. Larry?
I'll ask a hypothetical question. First of all, how long did Murray Lane take from beginning until somebody closes the door and locks it, owning it, roughly?
The process.
Gosh, when did we raise walls? Was it July of last year, I think? Or August? It was August. It
No,
was August.
July 10th.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Sorry,
She's got the number.
it was July 10th of last year that we raised the walls. I don't remember when,
Whole process?
was it 7 years?
for the
I was
process.
going to turn it back to Mr. Howell, because I was not the person doing the permitting at the time it started, and I just am unclear on the dates, but
I was younger then. It was daunting. I mean, your old executive director was part of that process. We couldn't even get the sale accomplished through the ZBA for almost 2 years. And then there was the approval and the comprehensive permit that had to be issued. Then I know your model. You take time to accumulate assets to be able to build them. So it was about 7 years.
Yeah.
But you don't give up. I see that.
We don't give up. You know, I've been with Habitat since June of 2018, and so I've been able to bring a number of projects through. And when everything goes really smoothly, it's 3 to 4 years. Between the time that you identify the land, you get through the LIP application process and ZBA, and then you get to the point of infrastructure and raising the walls.
Thank you for that. So hypothetically, if you got a piece of land that was already zoned and was surveyed, that would considerably speed it up. Your problems are on the front end, getting it permitted, correct?
Yes,
Once you get it, it becomes easier, shall we say.
it's easier. We do have capacity, a certain capacity, so we would do everything we can to slide something like that into our schedule as quickly as possible. One example, the Orleans Housing Trust had reached out to us, and we worked on a single home project, and our sweet spot really is 10 or more we'd love to do at a time, for a number of reasons. Because of, you know, it just, obviously, unit costs are lower when you have a lot of infrastructure, and it's just kind of as easy to tool up for that as something smaller. But we decided that we would do this project with them, and they gave us 5 years to do it. And we wound up getting that done in 2 years.
Right.
Very quickly, because we had an opening, because there was a delay elsewhere for not our own reasons, but for other reasons. So
Okay.
we'll take things on, and we will tell you realistically what we think our time frame needs, what needs to be allowed, but we always hope to bring it in, at least on time if possible.
Okay, so in other words, you'd like to be involved in the design if you had a choice.
Yes.
Okay,
Can I ask something?
thank you.
Certainly. Yep. Larry, all set?
I am.
Judith, go ahead.
Was it FHA that does the financing? or
USDA,
USDA.
yes.
Do you know if there is any dialogue to open up their products so that they would include condominiums in the future?
As a matter of interest, the
Just curious if you've heard of anything.
Well, I have not heard anything specific about any movement on that.
As a matter
But I
of
know
interest,
there's dialogue.
the Veterans Administration has released quite a bit of money. You might look there too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, yeah.
Any other comments or questions from trust members? Don?
Yeah, I'd like to keep this in mind, future agenda for discussions on the Marsline property, because it's a large property, and just me, I know we haven't discussed this, but I see an opportunity to create a kind of small village kind of setting where there's various things, rentals, houses, maybe even the YMCA. We've talked about that vaguely, but I mean, there's certainly enough land to be discussed, and I'd love you to be part of that discussion.
We would love it.
We'd be delighted to be, so, thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't want to suggest by asking if the members had any more questions that you were done with questions. I'd like to offer a few of my own if I could.
Sure.
But again, building off of, first of all, the statement of gratitude for what your organization does, you know, not just on Cape Cod, but really everywhere you have an impact. And I was very familiar with Habitat when I lived over the bridge. And now that I live on this side of the bridge, I know better than ever the critical need and what you folks are doing to help fill that. Can you speak generally for the benefit of the viewing audience, any connection, if there is one, between the town's subsidized housing inventory as I'm going to say it wrong, but I have to say it without an acronym, the Department of Housing and Community Development understands it. So how does SHI, subsidized housing inventory, relate to what you folks do in any way?
So as I'm going through, as I begin the permitting process, And if we're going to undertake a 40B process, there's the local initiative project application that I work with. And typically I work with a town planner and a housing committee on the package. And we put it together, and the LIP application goes to DHCD. And they have to go through a process. There's an opportunity, there's a 30-day window for public comment to be received. They come down and they tour the site with me and representatives of the town who have supported the project. And then they will, at the end of their process, if they feel it's an acceptable project with regard to site and a number of other conditions that they have for their criteria, and the pro forma works for them, they will issue a project eligibility letter. And with that, we're able to go to ZBA to begin the permitting process. At the end of the ZBA process, if we get through, there's no appeal, and we're able to record that comprehensive permit, we can then apply for those homes to go on to Harwich's SHI list. If it's through a special permitting process, there's a different mechanism that you use. It's a local action unit application that also goes to DHCD. It's a less onerous process. You send that in, and more or less it gets approved, and that unit. It's at the end of the LAU project, after you have your CO, that goes on to the SHI list. But all of the homes that we build, we go through the process with DHCD, and I feel strongly we have a very good relationship with them, and they've all been accepted on SHI.
Excellent, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My last question is more of an ask than a question, and then I'd like to open up if there's anyone in the public that wishes to offer any commentary. Knowing that your mission and knowing that you folks advocate for housing, and let the record show I winked, you may be aware that the town has an open position that town meeting unanimously supported, and that's the role of housing advocate. The position is still open, we still advertise for it, and respectfully I would ask if you folks can help us spread the word. As you may know, the town relied upon housing coordinators, and we did so through a vendor contract, but the town of Harwich has really upped the commitment. It's my understanding that we have one of the better salary offers for that position, and so I think that just shows the town of Harwich's commitment. So knowing how you folks travel and the conversations you have, if you could help us with that we would be ever so grateful, because we need that critical role filled soon, and we need to rely upon that person to help us move forward on our projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Happy to do that. Who should I direct people to, Mr. Powell?
So you always want to direct them to the Human Resources Director. No, I'm the Personnel Director. Human Resources is much nicer.
Okay.
That's Assistant Town Administrator Megan Eldridge.
Okay.
And she is the first person to receive applications, and then she'll vet them. So
Very good.
Megan and I are anxiously and eagerly awaiting more applicants for that role, because it is so critical.
Very good.
But we're not trying to rate them.
I didn't say that. My comments stand by themselves. These things are on, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have a question. Would that typically be a Harwich resident?
No,
not need to
there's
be.
no residency requirement on the position. The way that I've talked about it as the Chief Personnel Administrator for the town is that we're truly looking for the two words. We're looking for someone who is passionate to advocate for housing, and specifically for the benefit of Harwich. So I'm hopeful that there's a Harwichian, if that's a thing. And if it isn't, I apologize and I'll stop using that. But more than that, it is someone that has a passion. And that's why we called it a housing advocate rather than just a coordinator.
Yeah.
But
That's great.
Sure.
Very good.
that's all I have. If there are any questions from anyone in the present today, you'd be more than welcome to ask any questions or make any comments. All right, I think you're off the hook. Thank you both very much, really appreciate the
Thank
time.
you so much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will President Carter and his wife be coming to?
Long-time supporters.
That's right.
So begging the indulgence of the trust, the next item, we do not have a presenter on, but I will speak to it as it relates to One Cape. Excuse me, the next item on the agenda was Harwich Assistance Corporation and the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, or as they're known around here, HAC and APCC, a new effort that they have regarding Grow Smart program. If the trust is okay with that, I'd like to incorporate that into my update on the One Cape Summit that was held in the beginning of the month. So if there's no objection, I would then tell you what was envisioned under item E, because again, at this point, I don't believe there's a representative. So without objection, then, the new owner of 5 Bells Neck in West Harwich, as the trust may recall, the town, through the Board of Selectmen, was able to enter into a sale. The owner of that has made a commitment to the town to try to get some level of housing. Now, I say some level of housing because I don't want to use affordable housing yet or the phrase workforce housing, but he did reach out and was hopeful that he could have a discussion with the trust. At the time of the posting, we thought he might be able to join us. He's not able to, but I'd like to carry that forward to another meeting so we can talk to him. So that's item number, or letter E. And then that would bring us to item F, which is update on One Cape Summit, which was held here in Harwich on August 1st and 2nd. I was able to attend. I was able to bump into Beth, among many others, and here we are, and that bears fruit right away. But unless there's objection, I'll start out on that topic. I presented to the Board of Selectmen, so it's somewhat repetitive, but given my take on it, I think it's worth repeating. I can't say enough positive things about the One Cape Summit. However, I qualify that by saying part of that was because it was 2 beautiful days on the shores of Pleasant Bay, at Wauquasit and Harwich, and we all know the beauty of Harwich. But beyond that, it was, for me, personally invigorating to again be in the presence of so many people dedicated to our beloved Cape Cod and talking about the major issues that still confront us. Because if memory serves, this was the first One Cape in person since 2019, which is remarkable. So that alone, to me, made it feel like a tremendous success. As I participated in both days, my focus was predominantly on matters of housing, as you would imagine. The Assistant Town Administrator, Megan Eldridge, was there dealing with environment, climate, and other related topics, and we had a number of department heads who were there. Part of that, there were 2 notable things that I took away from that. The first is that item that was referenced before, talking about the Grow Smart Cape Cod program. And so, as I mentioned, Alyssa Magnotta of HAC, or Housing Assistance Corp., and Andrew Gottlieb of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, both presented the late afternoon of Monday, and they talked about this joint effort. And so my hope was trying to get somebody on behalf of that program, whether it was a representative from HAC or APCC, didn't matter for us. However, they had a schedule conflict. I did reach out to Heather Ferris the other day. She's the executive admin for Housing Assistance Corp., and she's indicated through the executive director, Alyssa Magnotta, that there's a keen interest to present this topic to the Board of Selectmen. And I respectfully asked that if they could first come to the Affordable Housing Trust so that you folks could hear it, and then by all means get them in front of the Board of Selectmen as well. So we are still working with that team to have this presentation. I am nowhere near capable of explaining what it is other than what I can read on the website, so I'm going to avail myself of that. But really what this is the 2 organizations have undertaken a mapping project whereby they're using the best available data and GIS technology to identify priority areas for natural resource protection, or key elements of the APCC mission, and priority areas for affordable, moderate-density housing development. Again, a primary mission of the Housing Assistance Corporation. But what they've really done is they've established mapping that any one of us can look at relative to the town of Harwich and general suggestions that they have. And I want to codify it that way. For me, my comments about this are not meant to be an endorsement of what the maps suggest, but rather I think it's a very cogent stepping off point for us to have those discussions as it relates to moderate density. And going back to the previous presentation, with Beth and Wendy, we know that density is a big word and is a big issue to come around. The other major thing that I was a part of is the Cape Cod Commission partnered with the Donahue Institute at UMass Amherst. And they do some incredible work on data analysis, data collection, and specifically what they were working on at One Cape was they're updating their surveys and statistics on housing on Cape Cod. So you may know that in 2010 and future years that they had done a thorough analysis of housing prices and impediments to housing and all that necessary data. And so they're trying to ramp up and do it ahead of schedule based on the effects of first COVID, where we've seen quite a bit remarkable change in the marketplace and incredible restrictions on inventory. And now they're also able to tie in the effects of inflation on that. And so they're going to follow up with a Cape-wide survey. They're going to reach out to every town on the Cape before they release that to try and energize people to be a part of it. But for me, the immediate impact was being one of 12 people from Cape Cod. I was asked to participate on behalf of the town of Harwich, where some of these folks were my peers in administration and management. There was one or two planners. There was a select board member, and it was both invigorating, hopeful, and potentially disheartening. And, it was engaging because, again, we had this collection of folks that are dedicated to these issues that matter to us, that are there day to day as I am as town administrator. And to be able to share some good stories, but also recognize that as a region, we're not spared. And in fact, I think many of us can argue that we have a much more acute problem for housing as it relates to affordability, workforce, and what have you. So with that, I'll open it back up to the trust and anyone else that wants to talk, but those would be my updates under item F as it relates to the One Cape Summit. Brendan, any comments or questions?
None.
All right, thank you. Judith?
No, and all of the One Capes, I don't know, I wish some of the money that they spend on doing surveys and these kind of things were actually spent on building buildings, because Cape Cod Commission in 2015, I think, when they had the One Cape down in Hyannis, they had just hired a housing person. I think she was she came from Falmouth, really smartly. She's now like one of the executives in the Cape Cod Commission. But within like 6 months, the housing position had disappeared and she'd been moved up into senior administration. And now they're, here we are, how many years later, they're replacing it. I don't know, I think one of the biggest missing factors is not only land, but money to get these things built. And with all due respect to the academics, let's just get it done, Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you for being there, and I think that'll be interesting to see how they're doing these maps. I know the water department, we've had these conversations, what part of town is even suitable for, building and not suitable because of the water, the wells. so, and then that also, of course, ties in with wastewater. And,
Sure.
yeah. So.
Thank you. Don?
I'd intended to attend. I actually had to call Erin up on Sunday night to warn her that if I showed up, there might be a new epidemic across Cape Cod. So I didn't go. But I served with Andrew. I still serve with him on the Bylaws and Rules Committee for the Clean Waters Board, the county. There's a couple of concerns. I know it's well-intentioned that he's got maps. I'm sure they're GIS-based, and it shows where we're sewering and other stuff. My concern is twofold. It has to do with both the in and out of this, if you will. On the sewering side, I understand that Dennis is now to the point where they're considering, if they move forward, they're going to be doing some PFAS remediation as well as nitrogen. But that's them. I know of nobody who's doing anything beyond nitrogen removal at the moment, or at least planning on it.
Not removal, yeah, we do test for PFAS.
I'm not talking about testing yet.
Oh, yeah.
I will be, but the PFAS removal for treatment is still an emerging thought for engineering. One thing I do know is, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're on the Water Commission, but I've spoken with Dan about this, we don't even test for certain other things, like pharmaceuticals that find their way into the water supply. And given the fact that, I shared this with him, given the fact that demographically, more than 50% of the people in Orleans, Chatham, and Harwich are over 65 years old, I think you can infer from that statistic that there's an awful lot of people who are on blood pressure medications and possibly antidepressants and stuff. Those come in and go out. I mean, and they wind up in the water supply. And there is absolutely nothing. We don't even know what the effect is right now because we're not testing for that.
We are testing, not the state and different agencies for the state are testing Cape Cod Bay, for example.
I'm talking about the lenses
Yes.
that we draw
Well,
the water.
if it's in the bay, it's definitely in the lens.
Yeah, I took note that the way they found out that polio was reemerging in New York was because they tested the sewer water, not because they tested the population. Then there's the issue of what comes in and goes out. We're recharging in Chatham, and it worries me. It worries Dan. I'm sure it worries you folks. The delicate balance between salt water and fresh water and the possibility of brackish water, and what are we going to do? My major concern overall, I guess, is as we go forward, this really needs to be cooperative. It needs to be something where people who are in Mashpee need to talk with people who are in the various communities about, what it is they're making as assumptions to be able to get to a certain point. And I know another thing that really worries me, Orleans is actually acting on that. We got to come up with a solution, because if we come up with higher density, it's not just affordable housing, it's just residences in general. We got to be able to assure ourselves we're going to be able to control what is basically a tsunami of Airbnb type of residences. I got one across the street from me right now, and there's a lot of them that are happening. Everybody's just flipping because the underlying value of a house is much greater if you know that you can rely on a cash flow, and that's your second, third, fourth home, and it's self-sustaining because it's listed on Airbnb and the revenue just keeps coming in. I'm not sure how our infrastructure and the development of our infrastructure is going to get impacted by people who just roll into town and leave. They're not leaving any economic impact directly, except for maybe going to the supermarket, during that period of time. But I'm more worried about the opportunities for housing, because you still need, if I'm right about the demographics, you still need phlebotomists, you still need CNAs, you still need people who are actual support personnel for the folks who do live here. And that's becoming increasingly difficult. I mean, I don't want to see a community that's essentially made up of really uber-rich people and a whole bunch of landscapers, which is, well, it sounds facetious now, but that's where we're rolling. And so all of these are globally part of that discussion in my mind. You can't just come out with a map that says, we're putting a sewer pipe here and there's a whole lot of land there, so why don't you think about developing that more? I would love to have a greater conversation. I know Andrew's really into scientific numeric analysis, but what you use as the basis for your analysis largely drives what the conclusion of your analysis is.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, even if we were to sewer all of Cape Cod, that does not solve our water problem at all. We have a water problem, it's getting worse each year, and density, in a large density, right, capital D, is not, it's gonna make it worse. So it's not just density in areas of town, but it's density in all of the Cape. We just, sewering will not solve that issue. I just want people to understand that. That's, you know, I sometimes hear people say, well, if we sewer, you know, it's all good. So I don't know if we as a board, I mean, I know obviously you're on the Board of Selectmen, if we can advocate for the Board of Selectmen to explore the different communities and how they have tried to do zoning around Airbnb, or I don't know what the correct terms are, but can we
Orleans is looking at it.
make a formal request to the BOS to explore? Like, I know like the city of Boston did something very strict, and I know Newport, Rhode Island, in certain neighborhoods restricted it, working class neighborhoods, let's say. And some of the towns, I think, on the Cape have started that process. Is that something we as a trust can make a formal request to the BOS to ask them to explore? I mean, not meeting them, but.
I feel like I'm being stared at.
Or alternatively, can I go before as an individual and request them to? I don't know what the process is. I just would
Have an open
like
forum
to
every
see
night.
it. I would just like to see it, and I think everybody, it would be nice if everybody on this board were also of the same interest level, that they would like to see it explored. Not that anybody's got any extra time to explore these things, I get that, but.
There might be a response forthcoming.
I'd be all in favor of asking for an agenda item. Mary?
Can I speak?
Absolutely. You just have to introduce yourself for the record.
And I
Mary,
apologize if I wasn't doing the correct process.
you're fine. Mary Anderson from the Select Board, and I share your concern, Judith. In fact, at maybe not the last meeting, but the meeting before that, I talked about what Orleans is doing, and we're kind of keeping an eye on what they're doing. We also had a proposal, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago maybe, from Mark Kelleher about a process that the town of Barnstable uses to get them registered and collect some money and have a better handle on it. This firm that Barnstable uses also provides an 800 number that if anyone has a complaint, like Don just mentioned a unit across from him, if he had a complaint, instead of him trying to track down the owner, you call this company's 800 number, they get the owner and get things moved. So both of those are on my short list. So I don't know if Don or Joe wants to add to that.
Selectman Howard?
I hate to do this publicly, but I'm not looking to make them good neighbors. I'm looking to not have them as a neighbor because it's really screwing up the mixture of people who live here. The 32 years I've been here, the folks, I moved to Harwich specifically because it had a mixture of working families, electricians, tradespeople, and I feel like somehow vaguely I towed some of the folks I used to live with behind me, and they just kind of rolled into town after me. But these were the ones who were just somewhat empowered. They show up, they see no social obligation whatsoever. They don't actually do anything here. They just live here and then go away to where they really live. It's not about collecting money because the infrastructure, as you're hearing, is pretty close to a delicate balance being tipped. And we have to recognize if we want this place to have a vibrant mixture of people, which leads me to final thoughts, because I don't want to come off as negative. I really have not in the past been a big fan of 40Bs that are hostile because you're only getting 20% of people. I mean, and the guilt part of that is the 20. The leverage part of it for the rest of the town is the 80. I'm really an advocate. That's why I'm really a fan of habitats. I'm really a fan of heshes. I mean, what we build is occupied by the folks we intended it to be built for, and it's not like if you give us a few crumbs off the table, we'll allow you to build this other thing. I'm really worried that the infrastructure that we have in place is not capable of sustaining in another 20 years of this type of development without something egregious happening. I mean, it's just that blunt. I would really rather see what Orleans is up to, because they're trying to talk about limiting this. And let's be frank, we have zoning that doesn't allow businesses in residential areas, and I'm not sure how you'd characterize an Airbnb, but for me, it's a money-making endeavor, and it's a business. So to that end, somebody's got to come up with a definition that's finer, because we wouldn't want a boatyard next to your house if you were living in a residence, because there are places to do that. There's industrial zones, and we have the people who developed zoning had worked it out about where the appropriate things would go. This blows that up. There isn't anything appropriate anymore because everything is appropriate.
Are they doing first, second homeowners type of thing? I mean, I know there are.
It's not even the
first
homeowner,
homeowners
it's
that
what
have
it is.
Traditionally vacated their house for the
We
summer.
gotta get a copy there.
And
Model
rented it
bylaw.
out so that they could make enough money to cover the mortgage through the winter. And, they go and they live in the different camps. But the second, it's the investment property.
So
I wouldn't care who rents it, as long as it's 6 months plus a day that somebody is there stably living as an abode. That if it's less than that, then that's transient as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it doesn't have to be owner occupied, because then you start messing around with, well, Mr. Davenport doesn't live in every house he builds. But the people who are renting there do. They live largely the whole year. And somehow or another, we can't come up with a definition for our own well-being, or else we're going to get swamped. I grew up, the reason I'm so passionate about this, and I think you know this because we've shared that, I grew up in lower middle class housing. There were Quonset huts where my friends lived. There were garden apartments, which was a terrific euphemism at the time. Projects where the woods I used to play in wound up being 6, 8-story apartment buildings. I get how development occurs, but I also am well aware of what happened on Long Island. Long Island had the luxury that Brooklyn and Queens are on Long Island, and their water wasn't permanently destroyed when their groundwater got destroyed in Nassau County, because they were able to do something about that. We don't have that luxury. Boston's 85 miles away. I mean, nobody's going to be piping rescue water to us. And I know what the Hamptons are, because I grew up watching the Hamptons develop. And, I can appreciate Mr. Joel and Mrs. Stewart and all the folks who live there. But I don't want that to be what we have here. This was a community of working people, and I would like it to see roughly be that in the future.
recognizing that Mr. Howell had the floor when the question came up from Judith, and to try and tie it all together again, we're still operating under the One Cape Summit update, so we don't, procedurally, we can't take any votes relative to that. However, the process would be, we're going to talk before the conclusion of this meeting about our schedule expanding, as we've talked before in the fall. But generally speaking, the town is aware of this, as Selectman Anderson had mentioned. It came about during the last budget discussion, so it is already on the radar for administration. Generally speaking, the efforts made by the town of Barnstable through their town council aren't as helpful as we would have liked, because they create ordinances. And that is to say that their ordinance is not subject to the same scrutiny that our zoning or general bylaw would be. So obviously, we, the town, are very interested in following what is happening in the town of Orleans. However, we also have the ability through our current vendor who manages our bylaw website, where we might be able to find examples of that to really jumpstart the discussion. So I can have this come back at our next meeting for a more formal discussion on that, but none of that prevents the work that's already being done that could potentially have this either work from the trust to the board or the Board of Selectmen directly to the planning board, who would have a responsibility to vet any potential zoning bylaws. Having said that,
Fair enough.
Mr. Howell, anything else on the One Cape Summit?
He's already said enough.
What'd you have for lunch?
That was a rhetorical comment, but the chair will not dispute.
Too much
Larry.
caffeine already.
No, I'm just here for the housing. You continue on.
All right, thank you very much. So I have that as a takeaway for a future agenda topic. Moving on then, I'll give a quick update. I'm not sure who amongst the trust members was able to participate in the open meeting law training that was conducted by Janelle Austin. There's a typo on that. That was back in July. It feels like July was as far back as June. But for me, having co-sponsored it, so to speak, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and the town clerk, one of the many helpful things that came out of Attorney Janelle Austin's presentation is a reminder generally that, you know, we as a town and any public bodies within the town have the obligation to ensure specificity of notice. So I will just demonstrate to the trust members, that's why we don't have an open-ended topic anymore of member roundtable or things like that. So going forward, we can accomplish that by making sure there's specific topics if one member wanted to either update or address the topic.
Can you repeat that? Sorry. You mean at the end, we used to have updates from the...
Correct, yeah, and so Janelle gave very compelling information regarding the Attorney General's Division of Open Government and how they respond to that. And they, for lack of a better phrase, they're really cracking down on that. So going forward, what we want to do is make sure that as we build agendas, if there's a topic that a member really wants to speak to, we'll put it up there proactively. Brendan, any comments or questions on that topic on open meeting law?
None.
All right. Judith, Don, or Larry, anything on that one? All right. And then next, we now progress to old business. And we have a representative from Coastal Engineering. If you just can come forward for a moment. And again, for the trust, this is regarding 0 Oak Street, Assessors Map 61, parcels B1A and B1B. As trust members may recall, this is one of several properties that the town, through town meeting and the Board of Selectmen, deeded over to the Affordable Housing Trust. We have, for the benefit of the trust members present, we have the survey that was done, if I'm saying that right, by Coastal Engineering, and we have a representative here this afternoon to walk us through that. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm John McElwee with Coastal Engineering.
John, can you just say your last name again, please?
McElwee?
McElwee, thank you. Good afternoon, John, and feel free to move it and do whatever you need to just explain that for our purposes.
All right. Should I take this with me?
Matt, any you know what, there's a microphone on the table that might work better. Matt, does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it is, do you want to set the table maybe and point it out, or? I think I can pick up your audio pretty well.
The mic is on the directional, that's on the table right now.
Right behind you.
Right behind you.
On the table.
This one?
Yeah, if you sit there.
I think he wants to walk next to them now.
Oh, I got you.
Sorry, Jeff and Janet, you might want to sit over there for the full benefit.
Okay, now that we're all set.
John, go right ahead.
We did a boundary and topographic survey of this site. Currently, it's shown as 2 lots. Lot A is right in this general area. Lot B is on the lower section, rectangular lot. I guess the total area of the site is 2.9 acres. There is a large wetland basically in the center of the property. The wetland is outlined by this green line here. It is right basically in the center of the property. There's an outlet area here of a wetland, and there's also another tongue or a dry ditch that runs up almost to the back of the property. With that, the property itself has quite a bit of relief in it, elevation-wise. We have a high point of about 50 feet here, and down in the wetland area, we're roughly right around 33 to 34 feet in elevation. With that, with the wetland that is here, there's also a couple of other areas that may impact any kind of development that you do on the site. There's a wetland opposite the driveway here in this area. This is a driveway to the golf course, and that would impact any kind of development that you do here. Also, there is the irrigation pond for the golf course is in this area right in here, and it roughly comes onto the property a little bit right in this corner. Again, that may impact any some sort of development that you may have envisioned on the site. With that said, and with these areas, we have marked off on the plan in the red line a 50-foot area opposite all of these zones. And then beyond that, we show 100-foot from each of the wetland zones. And so this is an area that's 100-foot buffer from, you know, the ponds and the wetlands. I believe the purpose of this is to try and find what areas you may be able to develop.
Is there any?
Is there anything left?
There's some potential. Not being a developer or dealing directly with conservation and health, but having a little bit of experience, I believe that if you were to develop this site, and probably one of the easiest spots would be up in this corner here on the property. You have probably the ability to put a septic system 100 feet from the wetland, probably for maybe 1 or 2 units. And, you know, then you would also have to get, you know, the permission to develop, you know, within the buffer zone of 100 feet, you know, it would require a conservation approval. So in this area, it seems, you know, pretty, easy and cut and dried as to what you may be able to do.
And there could, you know, theoretically be access to the road there? I mean,
Yes.
it doesn't cross over any.
No, that would give you direct access to Oak Street. Now, given the rest of the property, you got a large area up in here that has some potential, but getting there is something that you would have to, you know, discuss with conservation concerning this ditch here. It's a dry ditch, you know, if, you know, crossing that and maybe having a driveway coming off of the access to the golf course, you may be able to get into that. But obviously that you need to explore that, you know, with the Conservation Commission.
That's not exactly an economical way to do it, is it?
The cost would obviously be more to get back there, but, you know, because you got to run all your services. But it is a fairly large area on the site. Also with, I'm not sure how this irrigation pond would be treated as far as regulation, you know, with the conservation. We put the buffers as if it would be fully controlled, but I'm not exactly sure about that.
And that,
Other than that, they're really, we pretty much, you know, with the wetland in the lot itself and the way it expands off to the north. You got the bog over here on this side or opposite the street, has a little bit of impact, but not a large amount. And then this wetland down here, it does cut you off from, you know, providing the ability to develop.
So the upper left-hand spot there by Oak,
This,
is that maybe like a quarter or a tenth of an acre, you think possibly for upland?
How many square feet?
upland here,
Or how many square feet maybe, like
there's
roughly?
probably 20 to 25,000 square feet of upland.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, it's 174 feet on this leg, and then you got about 160 feet along the road here.
That's just short of half of what we call an acre here then.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay, yeah.
possible.
So,
The beautiful yard.
Our acres aren't really.
John, thank you. I want to first, Brendan, were you able to hear that? And whether you, go ahead.
Yeah, it was tough for me to hear. It was a little in and out, but I could read the map just fine. So I think I'm good, but I'll wait to hear the rest of you, and then I can chime in.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll open it back up for trust members. Unless, John, there was anything else you wanted to convey
I
before
believe-
the Q&A.
I believe that's it.
Sit
All
right
right,
down,
thank you.
John. Relax.
And then open it up for trust members for questions or comments.
No?
Don, anything?
No, actually, I misspoke. Our nominal acre is slightly less than an acre. It's 40,000. In 25, let's assume that you had to take some of that away for buffers and stuff. It still would be about a half an acre of developable just in that one spot.
Yeah, it would be the easiest place to work. And, you know, the relief is, you know, it's not too steep. You know, I think it's something that, you know, that would be the area to explore, I believe. I think anything else, in my opinion, would end up being a lot of extra costs just to access.
Yeah, this isn't a question for you, but since we own the whole parcel, the two parcels, I'm wondering what the rest of the trust would feel about referring the balance of this to Amy and the Conscom and to have them have a theoretical discussion about where our buffers would be in the lower portion? Because, I mean, I'm not willing to just let go of the possibility that something could happen there if there's upland. How it's going to happen is another issue, but you can't answer that.
It's up to them. You need to know what they're going to allow, or what they're going to be comfortable with. To allow you to buy.
I suspect they could look, but, you know, if John was going to buy that for himself for a building lot, he'd think twice about it.
No comment.
No, my
Let
point
the
was,
record show no comment was a reply.
my point was we hold title to it. While we're talking about, because I can walk and chew gum at the same time, while we're talking about the upper left-hand corner,
Yep.
maybe it would be worth our while to, because this is not answerable here,
Right.
to send the rest of it over to Conscom and see if there's anything that's retrievable for our purposes.
Yep.
I think input from conservation would be very helpful for you.
You'll let them
Would
draw
they-
their lines.
Would
Yeah.
would that require asking him to do another presentation for them? I don't know.
No, it just requires us to refer it.
Yeah, so what I heard from the consensus of the trust is I'll reach out to our conservation agent, let her know the discussion we've had today, share the information, and then we'll confirm next steps from there.
Yeah.
Particularly because we need to be able to have an access road, and that's the one impediment he's pointing out. It's not just setbacks, it's how would we get there?
Yep.
Brendan, back to you if there was any questions or comments.
Yeah, I mean, I might be repetitive. I'm sorry, I can barely hear a couple of the comments, but I think if we send it over to Amy, I think what she's going to require is some kind of footprint of a building and a septic system that can go within that spot before she makes any call. I don't think she's going to be one to say, oh, you could put 1,000 square foot house here, you could put this there. So I think there's still some work to do on whether, we could put a septic system in here in a reserve area and the footprint of the building with all the setbacks. So, I mean, it's great if Amy wants to take a look at it, but I think those might be some of her questions on what you're actually putting there. But, I mean, I know it's, if she's willing to look at it, great. But I think that will be some of her feedback back.
Points well taken, Brendan, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from the trust?
The question, since it's a town-owned parcel or trust-owned parcel, does it, and maybe this is a question for you, Brendan, does it ever work in
Yep.
the reverse, that the conservation kind of does a generic idea of what could fit there? Not a confirmed one, but instead, spending money to have somebody do the design.
Sure, Brendan, if I could, before I recognize you, I would just say, again, as administrator hearing the conversation, there's nothing that would prevent me as the town administrator reaching out to one of my direct reports, the conservation agent, to just validate where we're at and what would be required for next steps. So there's nothing that prevents us from doing that. Brendan, go ahead.
Yeah, agreed with that, Joe. I think that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, we have access to Amy and someone to look at it. It's not going to really do any harm, but yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Further comments, Don?
Yeah, sometimes you get so far into the weeds, you find yourself above your knees and close to your waist. So I'm just going to say this. For those people who aren't aware of what we're talking about, even if we 40B'd this, you can't blow by conservation setbacks and septic requirements. Those are things that have to be met even as you build in a substandard lot. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, Joe, one last thing.
Sure, go ahead, Brendan.
So when you're looking at this whole layout here, I mean, obviously in the blue you could do what you like, but when you get in front of conservation, that would be asking to be within within the 100 feet or within the 50 feet to break into that area, and that's where conservation probably would get involved. It's a long process with a notice of intent and everything else. But if it was just to stay into the blue and build something, then it shouldn't be a problem. But you're really running out of space, as you can see. So and access. So yeah, I think we run it by Amy real quick, and then maybe put it on the agenda for next month to look at it one more time.
All right, thanks, Brendan. Anything else from the trust? Anything out for public comment or input on this one?
Yes, I have a question.
So Janet, if you can come up to a microphone, just identify yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Janet Cardello. You had said that it would take 1 or 2 units. How about bedrooms?
I guess the unit I guess I was referring to would be, each one would be a 3-bedroom.
Okay,
So there would be 6 bedrooms total.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Janet, anything else? All set, or floor is yours?
While I'm here,
Sure.
there is a dirt road there. Is that shown on the map? It goes from Oak Street right up to the golf course?
No.
I
don't think so.
believe so.
I don't see it.
I didn't really do the surveys.
But if I could, the phrase dirt road may not resonate legally with the town, meaning it might be a cart path, it might just be a cleared path. John, when you surveyed the area, did you come at it from Oak Street?
I didn't really.
Sorry,
do the
whenever your
surveys.
colleagues did that, and the reason I ask is I know when you drive Oak Street, you can see what appears to be an opening, for lack of a better word, where it's easy to traverse the property. I don't know that that would meet the definition of a dirt road.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it may or may not be an ancient way. I suspect if it doesn't show on the map, it's not an ancient
Right,
way.
right.
I didn't have the privilege of doing the survey. So
Very good. You just have the privilege of presenting, right?
yes, I did. So,
Be a fire road too.
Yep.
Okay, and one more question. You mentioned a dry ditch. I know there is a ditch kind of in that area, that top left area. And I was just wondering, when you drive by, you can see it. It's pretty deep, at least like 4 feet.
yeah, we do have one ditch, which I think at one time connected to the bog right in here. And it was described, I know they described this one to me when I asked them today, and he said it was a dry ditch, but it is a flagged wetland.
Yeah, it looks like it would to a bog. If you drive by it, that's what it looks like.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Any other comments or questions from the public? John, thanks for presenting, and thank you to your colleagues for getting the work done. You're all set?
Thanks.
Thank you. And then for the trust, I know we have talked about getting input from our conservation agent, and I've also heard us endeavoring to come back at our next meeting. So these are all the topics that we have on the agenda. However, we have the right, under the open meeting law, to discuss our meeting schedule generally, because that's an administrative matter and not a deliberative matter. Brendan, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So I know that we talked post-Labor Day that we wanted to expand our meeting schedule to twice a month. So if you have calendars out, right now, if memory serves correctly, we strive for the last Monday in May as a regular meeting. Is it the will and intent of the trust members to keep that date and add another one? Or would you like to contemplate a somewhat different schedule to accommodate 2 meetings a month? And I'll just open that up for input.
The last Monday, you said?
So we presently use the last Monday of the month as our meeting date.
Okay.
I would suggest that we're reaching a point where we probably should get together twice a month, because a lot of things are coming up, and one of the things that I think we would all like to do is beat the snow to some extent.
And we voted on this.
I don't think it's going to snow in September. That's a-
Oh, don't say that.
Depends on where you live.
Somebody knock on wood somewhere.
Depends on where you
Yeah.
live.
Generally speaking, do we want to keep to Mondays? Do we want to keep to 1 PM?
I would like to throw out there and see what, how people might think about doing one of the meetings early in the morning, like at 8 or something.
The only concern I have with an 8 o'clock is the building doesn't open generally to the public until 8:30.
Oh, it does.
So we'd want to be mindful of that.
Or an evening, but I don't think any of your evenings are open, right? Between the two of you and your commitments with different committees.
Yeah, we have club meetings every Monday.
Well, maybe it helps to do this. Do we want to set a date earlier in September for our next meeting? And then we can explore it further. And I think if we did that, we know that we have September 26th already booked, so to speak, as a meeting.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have Monday, the 5th is the holiday.
12.
How does September 12th look for the members?
Fine by
So
me.
far, so good.
Fine.
All right, so then I'll say that our next meeting, let me go to that actual day that I mentioned.
When was that?
So we're looking at Monday, September 12th, 1 PM.
Sure.
Any chance you guys would want to meet in the morning? Or no?
Question before the trust is, does anyone want to meet in the morning on that date?
What's your definition of morning?
I could do that.
Brendan, that was an affirmative, even though John asked for
1
clarification?
o'clock is
Some of us are
fine.
up until like 11 or
1
12.
o'clock is fine.
All right, so then it sounds like we're hearing 1 PM on Monday, September 12th, here in the Griffin Room. And again, we'll still have September 26th in the books, and we'll go from there.
Good.
Brenda, does that work?
Yes, it does.
All right, then is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Brendan?
Aye.
Thank you. Judith?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Thanks, everybody. We are adjourned. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you for calling me. I appreciate it.
Sure. Take care. Hope you feel better.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I wanted to mention something.